We're going to do worksheet 10-2 solving by taking square roots. And the idea in this one is we're trying to get an equation down so that we just have one thing squared equals something else. And then we're going to get rid of that square. And the way we do it is by just taking the square root of both sides. So this little symbol here means square root. It cancels the square and leaves us with just x. Okay. The only thing you have to remember is when you do this in this context, that square root has a positive and a negative root that works for this. So we'll start here. The square root of 49. What times itself equals 49? And that would be 7. Right? Positive or negative 7 could work. So you can think about it. If I go 7 squared, 7 times 7 is 49. If I do negative 7 squared, negative 7 times negative 7 is positive 49. So they both end up working, and that's why we want to make sure that we're using both of them. All right. For number 2, the same idea. I'm going to go square root, and I get x equal to positive or negative. Now, when I go to do square root of 21, I think, well, what number times itself equals 21? And that I can't come up with, right? I don't know off the top of my head what that is. So there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can just leave it square root of 21 because it didn't work out nicely like the square root of 49 did. Okay, or you can use your calculator or your phone in this case and do it here. So I've got phone here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this square root button right here, the one that has a little 2 on it. I'm going to push that. And I'm going to put in 21. Okay, now actually on the phone here, so if you have your calculator, you can do it that way, hit the square root, then 21. But on this phone, I'm going to put 21 in and then hit this, and it gives me this big long decimal, right? That's the square root of 21. That times itself will give me 21. So we'll just give a couple decimal places. Let's go maybe 3 decimal places. 5, 8, 2, we'll round that up to a 3 because of the 5. That's behind it. Okay, so you can use your calculator to kind of do those ones that don't work out so nicely. Even if you're not 100% sure, use the calculator. Again, it's just this square root right here, function with the little 2 on it. Okay, so number 3, we subtract 30 because I want to get x squared by itself. You don't want to take the square root until it's all by itself there. Now I take the square root, and x could equal the positive or negative square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is just 2. Okay, so that's pretty simple. This one here, again, we're going to get x squared by itself, so we're going to subtract 4. 5x squared equals 500, then divide by 5. X squared equals 100, and now we'll take the square root of both sides. And we get x equal to positive or negative square root of 100. What times itself equals 100? And that would be 10. So plus or minus 10. All right, now number 5, the squared term is in parentheses here, this x minus 2. So we want to get rid of the square first in this case here. So we're going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. We're going to get x minus 2 equals positive or negative. And you think about 13, and we don't know what times itself equals 13. It's something between 3 and 4. But what exactly, we're not sure. So we're just going to keep it as square root of 13 to kind of start with, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And when I add 2 to this side, I'm going to wedge it right in front of that plus or minus. So we're going to get 2 plus or minus the square root of 13, okay? So that's how I like to write it. You could write it behind. What you don't want to do is you don't want to add it to the 13 and make it 15. That's not at all how you want to do this. All right, so that answer works, and maybe is the answer you'd have to pick, right? Or maybe what we want to do is go 2 plus 13 and hit the square root button and equals, and that's 2 plus the square root of 13. So I get x equals 5.60, and I'll round that up to a 6, okay? Or x equals, and now I'm going to go 2 minus 13 square root equals, and I get a negative 1.60, and again I'll round that up to a 6. Okay, So if you can leave it as a square root, that works just fine. If you have to do it as a decimal, then make sure you know how to use your calculator for that, right? And then our last one here, we're going to get rid of this 4. We'll have x plus 4 squared equals 36. All right. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides. And that's going to give us x plus 4 equal to positive or negative square root of 36. What times self equals 36? That would be 6. Okay. Now we're going to subtract 4. And when we do that, again, I'm going to wedge it right in front of that plus or minus. So what we really literally have is negative 4 plus 6 and negative 4 minus 6. So we're going to do both of those. All right, we'll do the first one. Negative 4 plus 6 would be 2. And negative 4 minus 6 would be a negative 10. All right, so technically both of those are correct, but this looks a little nicer, right? In this case, that probably looks nicer than this, right? So it's just a matter of what are we working with? You know, what did we end up with here? But that's how we go through this worksheet. Again, you're going to get a little review tomorrow to get you ready for our quiz on Friday.